year 6 months agreement with Continuum of Care Incorporated in the amount of $3,500,000 to implement the emergency housing program at 270 Foxon Boulevard, New Haven, Connecticut, and to utilize $2 million from ARPA funding to execute the contract. Item 5, LM 2023-0528. Order to read and file the updated budgetary and financial reports for the month of August 2023 in compliance with Article 8, Section 5 of the Charter. These items are filed with the City Clerk and may be inspected at room 202, 200 Orange Street, New Haven. Per order, the Honorable Adam Marchand, Chair, attest Michael Smart, City Clerk. If you need a disability-related accommodation, please call 3 business days in advance at 203-946-7651 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY. Public comment / testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Thank everyone for being here, and we will now have introductions of committee members, starting at my left.
Anna Festa, Ward 10.
Captain Singh, Ward 5.
Adam Marchand, Chair of the Committee, Ward 25.
Salvic Polo, Ward 18.
Richard Furlow, Ward 26.
Okay, we're going to proceed with the agenda as it is published, which means the first item will be the Alling Memorial Golf Course item, and we invite the maker to come forward. And before our city staff begins, let me just remind those of you who are going to come forward that we have microphones that work really well now. In fact, sometimes too well. So, you know, give yourself a little distance and don't worry about pushing any buttons. It's not like the old system. The microphones work quite well. When you come up, please give us your name and address for the record.
Rebecca Bombero, 122 West Rock Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. I am the Acting Director of Parks and Public Works, among other things. I'm here today to present to you another renewal on our contract with Alling Memorial Golf Club, Inc., who has been the operator out at Alling Memorial Golf Course for nearly 30 years. It was last bid in 2017, while the Parks Commission and Golf Course Advisory Board approved a 5-year contract with up to a 5-year renewal. This body did ask us in 2017 to come back after those 5 years. We came back last year in 2022, only seeking a 1-year extension and renewal to that agreement because we felt at that time we would be far enough along in construction to put us in a good position to bid it out again. Everything that could have gone wrong in the last year of construction. We had lots of hiccups, including termite discovery. We're now in much better shape, but do want to exercise 1 more year on the renewal options at the same terms as previously approved to allow us to put the operator's agreement out to bid in the late winter when we know when a completion date will be. That will give us the best position to negotiate either with the current operator if he is successful in that RFP or a potential operator. It's just in the uncertainty of construction, it's difficult to be in a strong bargaining position. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your concise report. And we'll now take questions from members of the committee on this request. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you remind us of when the construction first started?
I will have to get back to you on that for certainty when construction began. There were delays between the authorization of construction and the project start. because the initial designs came in significantly over budget.
The designs that the city presented or the designs that the,
We initially had a architect that was contracted by the city, working with city staff. The projected costs of the design were not what we got back when we bid it. So it had to be redesigned. At that point, we had a licensed architect on staff, so we in-housed the design revisions, and we're general contracting it to help, one, encourage participation by small and minority businesses, and two, to control the costs and phases.
so when we though look out for architects outside, don't we give them our budget?
We did give them the budget, and their estimate was what they projected would be bid was within that budget. Unfortunately, that's not what the market supported when we went out to bid, and the bids came back significantly higher than we had been estimated or budgeted.
Okay, and now we're on the right track, but as of when? That's where you have to get back to us,
So,
through the
yeah.
chair.
We're, I don't know when construction started. Again, it's been phased approach, and we did have to pause during the demo portion of construction because there was a termite problem that was discovered that required a redesign of a beam and other features.
Okay, do we have a timeline of when?
So the major construction contracts are being finalized right now. Again, it's all small bids, small and minority contractors. They are in the final stages of their legal and CEO reviews.
Okay, because I do remember that there was some testimony with some folks that were upset about some things. If I'm,
It's taken a lot longer than we thought. I mean, I remember 2.5, 3 years ago, while I was still Parks Director, finalizing our design and going out to bid, but the project was even, in the design phase before that.
so if this is approved, 1 year is going to be enough for all of this to
The
be
city,
finalized?
the city engineer is comfortable with that timeline.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. And before we continue with questions from colleagues, I'd like to recognize our colleague, Alder Walker-Myers, who has joined us. Further questions from colleagues on this request, triggering a 1-year extension of the existing contract with the operator of the Owen Memorial Golf Course. I have a question. I'm just going to say something, and I want you to confirm that I've got it right or wrong. The reason you want to wait for the construction to be further along, is that the city believes that once the renovations are complete, the scope of operations and the contract will need to be renegotiated because it'll be a different facility. And hence, you think there'll be materially different terms post-renovation? Or why is it important to see that renovation complete before negotiating a new contract with an operator?
One, I think we'll get more interest and competition with the new clubhouses further along. Those of you who have been out there, the existing clubhouses were from the 70s and weren't a
Some
great.
of us are from the 70s too. It was a great decade.
And
Please continue.
It is, however, facilities don't stand the test of time as well. It wasn't a great front door to the amazing courses we have out there. The updated restaurant and facilities will be more in line with what current experiences is. In addition, even the now 8 years ago, when we put this out to bid the last time, there are things in that last solicitation that we didn't include that standard operating procedures would warrant now, requiring a point of sale system, requiring digital transfer of records, efficiencies that can be achieved, both in terms of managing the contract and operations, but also, offering a great experience for our residents and services. It wasn't until the pandemic that the current operator moved to online scheduling for tea times, which is a great benefit, but we couldn't enforce that previously under the current contract. So really taking the time to write the RFP and ensure that we're up to date in terms of time at this opportunity where a newly renovated clubhouse gives us a good position in the market.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. When you and I spoke briefly about when this item should be heard, you expressed eagerness to see it move through the approval process expeditiously. Do you have any requests you're making of this body about how we should proceed?
No, you're before your October meeting, so we would have a first and second reading by the beginning of November and not hit the vacation schedules for the lawyers up in court council over the holidays. So
Wonderful. Proceed in the usual fashion then. Further questions from colleagues about this item? Alder Festa?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just cost. Did we cover cost of this contract?
So the contract is actually percentage based. So the terms of the contract will remain the same. It is included in your packet, and I am going to probably trip over it. But for the first $800,000, it is either 80 or 85% goes to the operator. The remainder goes into the enterprise fund, and above that threshold, the percentages shift.
Okay.
So again, it all goes into the operating fund, and on a monthly basis, we reconcile that.
Okay. The only thing I see is this, there's a special under non-personnel of $1 million, and then annual 1.3 million gross revenue.
So yeah, that's the net, what we experience, and the current contract should have been attached to your packet, and I can look it up right now. Give me a second. I should have refreshed my memory on it.
So there's something, 300,000 netted to the golf course enterprise fund, and the remainder of the funds are paid back to the operator.
Yep.
Is that
That's
what you just?
traditionally experience. Again, it's based on what overall sales are each year.
Yes, and that's here too, estimated on current year experience. And
All set, Alder Festa?
I am, if we could maybe
Okay.
get this information through you.
Through the chair? So noted.
Thank you.
Further questions on this proposal, this item? Seeing none, well, thank you for your time.
No problem. And just for reference, it's section 5 of the operator's agreement, and I'll send that back along to you.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll be
you.
grateful for that. Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Is there a member of the public here this evening who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there anyone here who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, we're going to move to item number 2, which is in regards to parking meters. I believe we have some staff from TTP who are going to come forward and explain this to us, and our economic development administrator as well. Just to remind you that when you come forward, after you've got yourselves settled, if there's any paperwork you want to hand to us, do that straight away. If not, that's even better. And then when you're settled, please give us your names and addresses for them. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael Piscatelli. I reside at 353 Summit Street in New Haven. I'm the Economic Development Administrator for the city.
Good evening, my name is Bijan Murthy, Deputy Director of Traffic Operation.
My name is Felicia Cloud, 706 Woodward Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. I am the Parking Enforcement Supervisor, daytime.
Eric Hoffman, Deputy Director, Manager of Parking.
Okay.
Just wanted to thank you all for your time tonight. Normally Sandeep would be here, but he is bringing the baby home to see the family for the first time. So appreciate the opportunity with the team Just to introduce the matter on parking meter management, it's an item that you haven't seen before the Finance Committee in some time. But thanks to the board's support as part of the budget process, TT&P has been able to take a deep dive look into the parking management system, the marketing, our customer service, the state of good repair for the meters. Many of these functions were damaged or dented in some way during the pandemic. And with Eric now deputy in the parking slot, Bijan and Felicia, we've really got a great team in place to rebuild this program, provide great customer service. People use the system every day, but also those that visit our city as well. So we're going to walk you through a deployment plan today and the way we'd like to invest the monies that came out of the capital program from this particular fiscal year.
Yeah, so the goals of the project, in this case, what this will do, enhance customer parking experience, diversify parking payment options, improve system efficiency and cost effectiveness.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, I'm just not able to.
Yeah, so I think the microphone's a little closer now. And I think you're referring to the presentation?
Yes.
This is the first page?
Yes.
Okay.
First page.
Yeah. So just so that everybody
Sure.
is on the same page.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Again, program goals, enhance customer parking experience, diversify parking payment options, improve system efficiency and cost effectiveness, increase revenue, and improve quality of life in this case. On the next page will be introduction. Existing citywide on-street parking system. So we have two types. As you probably all have seen it, they are your single parking spaces. We call it IPS, single parking space. And then the kiosk or multi-space units. And also these units will accept coin, credit card, mobile pay apps, Park Mobile, Gold, New Haven Gold, Password, and also vouchers. 2022 to 2023 revenue was $3.9 million. Meter and kiosk was $1.9 million, and mobile pay app was $2.1 million, and coin and vouchers were $680,000.
Oh, the color, are you pointing out the 1.1 rather than 1.9?
This is 1.9. I mean, sorry, 1.1.
Gotcha.
Did I say
Thank you,
9?
Mr. Chair.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Next page. Existing inventory. Basically, we have about 3,000 parking spaces citywide. As I mentioned, there are about 2,100 single parking spaces, which some of them we call MK3, MK5. These are different type of meters. I put my little shopping bag here in case if you want to see what the difference is.
Yes, we do.
I'm sure you all have seen it, but this is a little bit different.
Physical exhibits.
Right, because this way,
We have a brand new shiny
Yeah.
one too.
the good one. So this one, these are the newer one, has a push buttons.
Mhm.
These are MK5. The screen is much larger. The solar panel is much larger. Is more efficient than the older model, which in this bag shows, as you can see, screen is much smaller here. And these were touch screen. What happens was the water gets in the button and starts freezing up. And when it was raining or super cold, you had to keep pushing it and depends on your luck. Sometimes you get time, sometimes you did not.
Mhm.
So the company came with a newer model, and then they came with that. And I call this one, yeah, this one is Palm, is a different manufacturer. This is like dumb meter, so it's not, it used to be very smart. Now, unfortunately, it's dumb. And this particular one is cannot communicate with our central office. So each of these communicate to the system through cellular modem. And so if the meter gets jammed or there is an issue or problem, sends the alarm to the supervisor or maintenance crew, and those guys will know when they have to go repair. And also, if the canister gets full, it tells them it's time for you to go collect.
Mhm.
Even though we collect, but this one is much better, smarter. Unfortunately, the MK3, the older model, is almost 20 years old, but we have in the city about 13 years now. And they mentioned that, hey, look, we cannot support this anymore. You have to make a decision which way you want to go. Do you want to go to the newer one, because we are not supporting this one. So,
Okay.
so the newer model, single space meter, there are 2150 spaces. And from this MK3, MK5, about 1900 spaces. And the old model, we had 250 of them that needs to be replaced. And multi-space kiosks, and they are about 100 spaces. And so the multi-space, or the way they design, they cover between 8 to 10 spaces. Because, so each space, as all you know, is about 20 feet long. So you usually put it in the middle so that you don't want anybody to walk 100 feet. Because otherwise you have to walk a long distance, especially when it's cold. We're carrying a little baby, I don't think we want to walk that long. So next page, there is a city map where these meters are, but it's a little bit difficult to see, but majority of the meters are in downtown area, around the university, Yale campus, hospital area. So it gives you a general idea where these meters are located.
Are there any meters beyond this map?
No, they're all
within this,
right,
the
exactly.
bounds of this.
Very much so, yes. Eric, you want to take the rest of it?
Sure.
Thanks.
And we'll just move that mic a little bit toward you. Thank you.
So Bijan mentioned one of the issues to move forward with this project is that the MK3s, that middle model, has reached its end of life, and the manufacturer is no longer supporting it, and we're at a junction to make a decision. The other issue is that the POMs are not compatible with the portal that we have, the IPS portal, which makes it difficult to know when they're full, if there's any maintenance problems. It doesn't lead to efficient operations from our staff. It also means that we have to carry 2 up to 3 types of spare parts, training for the technicians. So we're looking to move to the MK5 meters and surgically try to replace them in the field so that we don't have to go through replace a wholesale amount of meters, which leads us to the potential that we could lose revenue when meters are down and miscommunications and things like that. The other, that leads us into, I forgot what page we're on, but the next slide where it talks about the project and sole source type of items. But our thinking is to be able to stay with a particular manufacturer that makes it efficient for our crews to service them, to that we can get credible information through a single portal. And we're also going to be adding multi-space kiosks, which would allow us to repurpose existing single-space meters to make it more efficient. The last page of the handout explains the funding sources. We're looking to replace approximately 1,400 single-space meters, all up to the MK5s, and then adding 50 multi-space of the Flowbird kiosks. And then there's the breakdown of where the different sources of the money is going to be coming from. 800,000 will be coming out of the bonding initiative. 300,000 will be out of the ARPA money. We also have a draft schedule that if we get approvals through to the mid to late November, we have about a 60-day lead time for the equipment to start coming in. The vendor says they can do about 600 meters every 10 days. So there's about a 4 to 6 week installation process. One of the issues that Bijan touched upon early on in the first thing is customer service. And Felicia could answer the types of calls we get from the parking public. Our PEO supervisors are also our customer service people. They get the calls of all sorts, and Felicia can speak to the issues that we also deal with enforcement as our meters go down and the public complaints.
So basically, we get the calls on the meter is they don't work, they're not functional. It took my money, I didn't see a time, it didn't turn green. Some of it is learning the process of the fact when you use the app, it won't turn the meter green. And so, but our officers come along and we look up the license plate. Once we verify the license plate is paid, we move on to the next. A lot of the complaints were I stuck my credit card in and it ate my credit card. It's not accepting coins. The signal on this one is a little, fuzzy. So sometimes it doesn't get the signal and sometimes it does. And with them not backing it up, it's like using Windows 2.
Yeah, these are like 2Gs and 3Gs, which no longer are going to be supported by Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a choice in that case because they're obsolete. Now they are at G4 now, or 4G in this case. So the newer one, they're 4Gs, but the older one are 2Gs and 3Gs. And that's why Alicia mentioned sometimes they work, sometimes doesn't. Unfortunately, it depends on the bandwidth, their system.
So I wanted to thank you for your time on the matter tonight. I think you see it in the budget, how important the program is from a revenue perspective. I mean, we generate somewhere between $4 and $6 million a year. To Felicia's point, it's much better for all of us that is generated on the meter side and not on the collection side, which leads to frustrations with the customer, disputes, a real, just sense of disillusionment with the customer service of our town. So the summary is, as laid out by Eric, is we have about 3,000 meters in the system. 1,400 would be replaced with this capital bond. In addition, we would buy 50 of the multi-space meters. So they get a little bit more, you get the whole block as opposed to just the single space. So if you roll that up, the 1,400 single and the 50 multi-space, that will cover about 2/3 of the system. And the other third of the system is in a state of good repair already. So the reason we bring this to you with the existing vendor is we're not replacing the entirety, but we're replacing the ones most in need, as I'll forget which one it is, the third one over there. And we'd ask for your support. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We'll now take questions from colleagues on this item. Alder Furlong.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question, well, two quick questions, if I may. Is there a contract with Verizon and how does that work?
Not us, the manufacturer, IPS and Parthenon, we already have.
Let's make sure that microphone is swung your way. You can use the arm.
Yeah, the manufacturer of both meters, multi-space and single space, have several vendors. Depending on what part of the country they are, sometimes, for example, even for us, they have combination of Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T. So yeah, we don't have any decision in that case.
And the goal is to replace the PON and the mark.
MK3, correct, yeah.
Do we know approximately how much revenue has been lost because of those two?
They're still functioning, they're still collecting, so there has not been any direct impact of any large scale on revenue.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlong. Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation. I see the newer model will be taking like Apple Pay and Google Pay. Does the kiosk also take Apple Pay and Google Pay, or it's not functioning like that right now?
They take, I have to check.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get back in.
Right.
We're also gonna have to get back on that picture. We are looking at non-contact for the MK5s. We have to get clarity from the vendor if that's going to cover Apple Pay and Google Pay, or it will be just the tap the card as opposed to tap your phone.
Okay, you took care of my question because I was going to ask more questions about how that's actually going to work. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we'll definitely want to get more information on that, both in terms of what's available right away and what the vendors anticipate becoming available in the future. I think the point about more modalities of payment would probably be good. Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some clarification. So in the letter that was submitted, it says 2,000 meters or spaces, but then the presentation says 3,000.
So we have 3,000 spaces in the entire city, but we are not replacing all 3,000 spaces.
Okay, so the 2,000 that's in the letter are the ones that are going to
Correct.
be replaced.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you for that clarification. And then also, annual per year revenue is 4 to 6 million, but I'm not sure what this 2 million is on our fiscal impact statement, where it says annual 2 million. It's in our packet, not your presentation. I can only go by our packet because that's what we have to look at when it's submitted to the board. So just for clarification.
I don't have it in front of me, but we'll get you the actuals. We just closed out fiscal year 23. We'll get you those actuals.
Okay, because there's a difference between 4 and 6 million and 2 million. Also, you mentioned about broken meter. What do we do about broken meters? If people do park at them, because I'll hear someone park at a broken meter and they're like, it's broken, what do I do?
Right, so
So right away, we tell them to appeal their ticket. And I notify them that it's against city ordinance to park at a broken meter. However, if you appeal your ticket, they'll review it. And if it's your first time for that complaint, that means you didn't know, then we'll let, 9 times out of 10, it will be, okay. You know, they won't have to- yeah, they won't have to pay for it.
Also, beside coins, as everybody knows, credit card, and the last thing is vouchers. So if, for whatever reason, the meter is non-functional because of the battery is dead or communication goes down, you're still responsible to have a voucher at the parking meter. So,
And all that is explained when they do the appeal process.
Okay. Now, I don't want to do the math, and maybe you can answer it much faster than my math skills, but we have the kiosks and we have the meters.
correct.
Does it make sense to move to all kiosks versus having all those meters? Or, what is the purpose of one versus the other in the different areas?
It's a very good question. I ask myself all the time because, see, it depends. Certain area, people are more useful. They're used to just walk a couple feet to the parking meter. If you're the elderly area, I don't want to walk 70 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet to put my coins and come back, right? So we pick certain areas like around the universities. People love that sort of technology. They're easy, they memorize the license plate number, they just do it quickly. In downtown environment, we're more sensitive to that. For our maintenance crew, they love multi-space units because they don't have to stop every 40 feet to take the money out of the canister, because you have to open every locks, especially when it's super cold. That's the last thing they want to do. The lock gets frozen, they want to mess with it. They want to just stop at multi-space place, open one, dump everything. So it's not perfect in either one. I mean, you can bring 100 people, 50 people love this one, 50 people love the other one. It just depends. That's the honest answer.
Are there really that many people who pay with coins?
Oh, yeah.
About a third still pay with
Yeah.
coins. The other calculus is that the single space and the multi-space per space is almost the same cost. So it's about $600 for a single space meter and about $600 per space using a multi-space, if it covers 10 spaces. If it covers less than 10, then the cost is higher for the multi-space
Okay.
upfront.
Okay. And just one last question. What type of service contract comes with the new meters if something were to happen?
Right, so usually we have 3 maintainer and 1 supervisor. So they basically repair majority of the meters. Unless something is broken, then we have to get parts and then our crew replace those. There is no maintenance contract with them. But if we have to send them out, they have fees, like if you repair certain thing, it costs you $70. If you replace more detailed stuff, costs you more. So they have fee structure, but any repairs, we do it. Parts, we purchase the parts. Our crew replace those items.
But how about with software? I'm assuming there's some kind of software that's associated and that's a part of that company?
Right. So when you purchase either of these meters, doesn't matter if it's a single or kiosk, there is a cost to that. which is all included on when you purchase the unit. And then obviously, if you're using credit card, you have to pay for transaction, back-end office, all that stuff.
And how about defected meters? If they come defected, do they replace them?
If they're defected, our meter supervisor usually calls manufacturer. They have to mention what the issue is, then they will send a repair, a new one, or a particular parts we need to replace it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more question. With the new meters, will the city ever consider the meters to reset when the car pulls away?
So these particular meters are not equipped for that, but if they can activate it, obviously you have to pay a little extra money, and they have a sensor inside that as soon as you leave, then it resets the meter to 0. So let's say you put 25 cents, you use 18 cents of it, the 17 cents stays in the parking meter. As soon as you leave, it goes to 0. But then you have to pay, obviously, for that extra service. For the
So this is not something that the city would consider. It seems like the kiosk mode, it just seems that would make more money.
That's
when you drive
that's one of
That's my
those
license plate, right?
advantages of single. Yes, you're absolutely right.
So would the city consider looking into that or turning on that sensor, or is that something that you just haven't considered? Or
In the past, we tried it because the manufacturer always promised this is the best. You buy this, it works perfectly. Unfortunately, when we tried this, I want to say about 5 years ago, it was not very accurate. Sometimes it was zeroing it out. Sometimes, depending on your car, let's say you backed into the parking space or came forward, it messed up the accuracy of the sensor.
And I'm not recommending it.
No, I understand.
Because Bridgeport did it and it was a disaster.
Okay.
I'm just wondering whether the city had.
No,
considered
we tried it. We try everything, but that's why you're very careful to just go ahead and buy it or pay the extra services. They haven't mastered that piece yet.
And I think we all appreciate having that extra 5 minutes on the when we drive up.
Right. That's true.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Further questions from colleagues? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the revenue that I requested earlier? Does that include the parking ticket revenue? Or is that separate?
No.
So we'll roll it up for you in one document, but we did pull the financials a couple before the meeting. Fiscal year 22, we did 4.8 million, and that included 700,000 in meter bags. So that's when, say, a contractor puts a meter bag on it. Fiscal year 21, which included a considerable amount of the COVID year, we did 3 million. And it doesn't have the breakout for meter bags, but I figure we did some meter bags as well. Fiscal year 20, which was the other half of the COVID year, but half of a really good year, which is 2019, we did 5.5 million. So that's the 4.6 I was referencing earlier.
Okay.
4 to 6 million.
But does that include a ticket if someone's meter were to run out and they get a?
And if you get a ticket, it's in a different spot in your budget. It's budgeted as tag
Ticket,
revenue
okay.
or something like that.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues? The only question I'll have relates to the multi-space kiosks. Alder Furlow has already pointed out one way that it's advantageous, which is every time a new vehicle pulls up, it has to put in a new license plate, and that person is charged full freight and doesn't get the benefit from a previous parker. You mentioned that it was advantageous from a coin collection perspective. Are there other advantages to it that you see?
Anytime you reduce number of fixed object on the sidewalk,
Make sure you swing that arm. Thank you.
anytime you reduce number of fixed objects, it could be anything.
Yeah.
Is a plus, especially if you're applying the snow in the sidewalk.
Mhm.
You don't want something in front of you
Mhm.
because we have the area, the meters get damaged a lot during the winter.
Mhm.
That's why sometimes you're passing by, meters are leaning
Mhm.
every direction. So at least with multi-space units, they're more solid. It's very difficult to come pick it up and take it home.
Mhm.
So there are plus and minuses on everything. That's why we're slowly increasing the number of kiosks because we are buying 50. So I usually look at it, it's good for 8 to 10 spaces.
Mhm.
That's really about 400 to 500 parking spaces, which we are reducing single parking space to multi-parking spaces. You know, there will be a time, maybe a lot of single parking meter will go away, becomes multi-space units, but little by little.
I'm wondering, and perhaps you could answer this, since you're on the ground, is there a better or worse compliance rate or non-compliance rate with the multi-spot kiosk versus the single spot meter?
Not to my knowledge. They either pay or don't pay either way. They get frustrated, sometimes causes them not to pay. But other than that,
Do we have enough experience with the multi-space kiosks to know its maintenance and functionality record?
I go with what my staff tell me. They more comfortable with multi-space units. They feel is more solid than single. So I would say is more reliable, but the same token, you have to look at the dark side of it is if you damage one of those,
That's 10 spots that go up.
yeah, that's why I said there is no perfect unit
Mhm.
because we had several years ago when we had Gateway Community College was under construction, we had contractors on Crown Street decided to put construction foam inside the slot and 20 parking meters were all damaged. And you cannot fix those, especially with construction, the foam, it just destroyed the whole unit. I mean, imagine if you do that to multi-space machines, each of them like $6,500. Do the math, you're talking about big money. So.
Okay. So, well, before I ask my last question, let me recognize our colleague from the 22nd Ward, Alder Morrison, who has joined us. Do you anticipate the current footprint of these multi-space kiosks expanding in the coming months? And where would you try some more of them?
So you're looking at some on Grove Street in University area. There's some on Prospect. Prospect has a lot of multi-space units there. And by hospital, especially with, as soon as the construction is done with St. Rachel Hospital in Sherman Avenue, in that area, it will be a great place. So it will be all over,
Recording in
but
progress.
everybody will get some of these meters.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from colleagues? Oh, I do have one more. I ask and I answer. Can we say a little bit more about the money, where it's coming from? It says here, 800,000 from city bonds. I assume that's already like an existing account whose definition would allow this expenditure. So it'd be good to know a little bit more about that. And then there's $300,000 in ARPA funds. So there's no resolution doing a new allocation. So that would be an existing ARPA fund account, and which one?
These are both accounts that you approved with the fiscal year 24 budget.
Mm-hmm.
So on the capital side, it's called the meters account,
Mm-hmm.
which is a historic account for us. So it allows for both the installation and maintenance of the meter system. And then the ARPA account was sources and uses that Michael Gormany worked on, whereby we wanted to make sure we deploy the ARPA money.
Mm-hmm.
So they run hand in hand. So they'll be shown in two separate areas of the fiscal year 24 budget. And both accounts are approved.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to think through all the allocations that we did. Some of them were economic development related. Others were like fiscal impact. Do you happen to know which kind of category of account this would be coming from?
I don't want to guess, so
Okay.
we'll get it.
That would be great. But it's definitely not a new allocation. It's an existing allocation. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any further questions from colleagues, so we'll thank you for your presentation, and you can get that to us later. Thank you, Representative Piscatelli. So as you folks are excused, let me see if there's a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item. Any member of the public wishing to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item related to parking vendors and expenditures for new meters? Seeing none, we'll thank the staff for the presentation. We'll move on now to item number 3, the ratified agreement between Local 287 and the Board of Education. And I see officials from the Board of Education coming forward. When you are settled, please give us your names and addresses for the record.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Thomas Lamb, Chief Operating Officer of BoA Public Schools, 259 Mayfield Drive, Trumbull, Connecticut.
Natalia Sierra Milan from Shipman and Goodwin, 1 Constitution Plaza in Brooklyn.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
So thank you very much. This is an exciting day. So before you have the ratified agreement between the BoA Public Schools and the 287 Building Managers Union. This agreement was spearheaded by Sierra Milan from Shipman and Goodwin. And this agreement will go from July 1st of 2023 through June 30th, 2026. This includes all of our building managers, our drivers, members of the union that are assigned to all of our buildings for maintaining the building during the summer. They manage the part-time cleaning staff. They take care of the building. They're part of the school leadership and a very valuable part of the district. We were very happy to move to an agreement with that. That made sense. That was in line with our district dollars, and also was able to provide the district with an agreement that is forward-thinking. We were able to adjust some of our language from previous contracts that made sense. And at this time, I would like my partner here to go through the substantive changes of the contract along with the financial impact.
Thank you.
And before you begin, let me just point out to colleagues that a stapled copy of the document was both in the packet and also given to us at the beginning. So there should be at least one, if not two copies. It says tentative agreement on the front. Please proceed.
Does everybody have it? Okay. Well, I'm not going to bore you reading it entirely, but to the extent that you want me to, I'll be more than happy to do so. The contract that you have attached to your packet is the old contract, so you can reference sort of the old language to the new one. But in the tentative agreement, anything that's bolded in italics, that is the new language that we negotiated. I am proud to say on behalf of the negotiating committee that all of the goals that the board set out to achieve, we achieved. And I am also proud to say that what the union hoped to achieve by their salary and insurance, they also achieved. So it was a very collegial agreement, despite, our desire to keep each other from finishing it. But in any event, as Tom mentioned, the fiscal impact statement is right in your packet. In the first year of the contract, we agreed to a 3.5% increase, which amounts to $169,000. In the second year of the contract, we agreed to a 3% increase, general wage increase of $150,000. And then in year three, a 3% general wage increase of $154,000. Okay. The other financial piece, and I'll get to that right away, is on, I believe, page 3 of the packet in front of you. And it's number 12 on that packet, and it outlines the insurance. The city was very much involved in every process, every part of this process as it relates to insurance, and their goals were also met. We went from the current 4 plans that the city has. As you might know, as you've probably heard from a lot of different people, there's a hierarchy of plans in the city, and it's become increasingly more difficult to manage all those plans. So it was one of their goals to reduce the number of plans offered to this bargaining unit from 4 to 2. We were able to achieve that. So currently, effective July 1st, going back to 2023, they only have the Century Preferred PPO plan and the high deductible health plan. We adjusted the premium cost share of each plan as outlined in number 2 of page 4. And so the Century Preferred plan is currently at 27, but as an incentive to get away from the 4 plans, they reduced it down to 24%. We maintained the high deductible premium cost share at 11%, and then increase it by 0.5 percentage point in the second and third year of the contract. We also switched first-year members, the new enrollees in the high deductible plan. The goal for the city is to move everybody over to the high deductible plan. So anybody who switches in the first year receives a 65% contribution to their deductible, and then will go down to 50% thereafter. So it's just a little incentive to move everybody in the first year of the contract. There were no changes to vision or dental. To the prescription drug plan, there were some significant changes that are outlined in there, which include a specialty drug management provision. As you know, managing high cost medications is a significant priority in the city, because particularly those middle tiers, those specialty drug tiers are very important and sort of managing the cost. So we made that change as well. So those are the fiscal impacts of this contract. There was also some language that through Tom's good work, we were able to achieve. One of the board committee's goal was to have the union acknowledge that we have this third party that manages the cleaning of our schools and the maintenance of our schools. And we have some significant language in this tentative agreement that you can take a look at that actually acknowledges that that is in fact the case, that we have a third party consultant that deals with that. They also acknowledge that they have the right to implement discipline and address any concerns that they might have over the years. That has been a little bit of a concern, and there was a little bit of a question. And so the union very appropriately, and we thank them for it, agreed that that is how we have run things in Haven for quite some time. All the other changes are not particularly so significant. They're more changes. Some of them are technical in nature. Some of them are typographical in nature, not really significant. The only one that I would also point out to you is that Currently, any claim of discrimination brought under the contract can be grieved. It could also be brought before the CHRO or in front of the EEOC, or there could be a state or federal claim. As a result of one of our proposals, we were able to have the union agree that in the event somebody wants to bring a grievance on the basis of discrimination on a protected class, that they will hold that grievance in abeyance to avoid having different opinions in different forms. Because if you go to the CHRO, you might get an opinion. If you go to arbitration, you might get another one. And so we've agreed that they will hold their grievances on that issue in abeyance, so we don't have any competing decisions, which can sometimes become challenging. So that was a significant win in our favor, I think. And the union agreed that it doesn't behoove them to have competing opinions, because some of them might be good and some of them might be bad. So other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward. And like I said, it's my understanding through speaking with Patrick Sampson, the representative of the union, that the union was just as happy as the board committee was with this agreement. So we hope you support it.
Our staff, the director of OLS, was giving me all sorts of hand signals. But alas, I did not understand that. I'm going to brush up on my OLS hand signals and apologize for my misbehaving microphone, which seems to be better now. So, thank you for your presentation, and we'll now take questions from committee members. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many members are part of this union?
Okay. That's a tough question.
Even approximate.
I want to say somewhere around 150.
And out of those 150, was there any opposition?
Oh, we don't get involved in the union
Okay.
votes.
But it was unanimously voted by a majority, or?
By a majority, not unanimous.
Not unanimous, but there, most of the, and I only ask because if it's 150 and, 100 or 80 were for it and the remainder were not, that's a big gap.
Unfortunately, I don't know. I just received a text message from Patrick Sampson telling me that it had been ratified by his group, which just means a majority agreed to it.
Okay. And how, you mentioned this includes building maintenance,
building managers, assistant building managers, drivers, warehouse staff workers, our floating building managers who cover for vacations and sick time. I believe that covers all of the job classifications.
Okay. So it's through the building managers that a lot of folks report to.
Correct.
Who are responsible for whatever school concerns are, work orders, et cetera, and that falls under the building managers.
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, and this is probably off, and you could tell me if I am, but I'm just referring to an article in the, I think it was in the Independent, about some work orders and concerns with that, and I just want to make sure that,
This is a different union.
This is a different union,
Correct.
so it's not those building managers that take care.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues about this ratified collective bargaining agreement between Local 287 and the New Haven Board of Education? I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I hope I have answers.
That would be great. We've approved quite a few collective bargaining agreements in recent months, which is great. Most with the city, a few with the Board of Ed. And one topic that has been brought up in many of the agreements is post-employment benefits, where the city sought to have employees contribute some small percentage of their yearly income, 2% or less, toward post-employment benefits, like their medical upon retirement. I don't see that anyway in here. Is that because they don't get any post-employment benefits, hence there's no point in their contributing to it, or was that something you just didn't talk about this time?
It's my understanding that only city employees get that. I could be 100% wrong on that, but it has never been a subject of discussion with any of the bargaining units that I've negotiated with on behalf of the board. And my understanding is because they don't get those.
They don't get those.
But I'm not sure.
Okay, well, that would most likely answer it. So then the other question I had is I noticed in the language that there's a commitment to have a monthly meeting between the leadership of the local and the board of ed. Although that can be canceled by agreement by both parties. Is that just to cover labor relations type issues, or did they talk about building issues, how to improve operations? What's the scope of those conversations?
Anything and everything the union wants to talk about is on the table. It's designed to foster a better relationship between the staff, the management company, and the Board of Education. Mm-hmm. I'm part of it when I can be, but the majority of it is ran and operated by ABM Services and the Executive Director of Facility Management. He coordinates with Tom DeLucia as the union president, and any meetings that they have would be scheduled between the two of them.
Okay, so they could bring up operational issues, they could bring up grievance issues, they could bring up whatever they want.
There's no topic that's not open for discussion.
And if I could just add one, the union actually requested that primarily because they want to avoid grievances. Not that they've been a bargaining unit that have brought a lot of grievances forward, but there have been some operational challenges that they felt they were not able to address in a timely fashion. And so they wanted these regular meetings to be able to foster a better relationship. To Tom's point, there had been a lot of confusion as to who they needed to talk to, and so this is an attempt to sort of bring everybody together on a monthly basis, and that way we avoid as many grievances as possible.
And that also goes back to the other resolution around recognizing ABM as a third party, and they're the ones that are managing in position of authority for the union.
Slightly complicated arrangement.
Yes.
Okay. But the contract is between the city and between the Board of Education and the union. Although their day-to-day operations are managed by the NIRF.
Not an uncommon arrangement.
It does happen. Okay, further questions from colleagues on this ratified collective bargaining agreement? Seeing none, well, thank you for your presentation.
My pleasure.
And I'll ask if there's a member of the public here who wishes to testify on this item, you may be excused. Is there a member of the public here who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, we will proceed with our meeting. But before everybody gets up, we are going to take a 5-minute comfort break. And because I'm the chair, I need to do that. And so we're all going to do that. 5 minutes, we'll be back.
Shouldn't hit that microphone. Pause.
Yeah, thank you. Hello.
Food, I'm running.
Yes.
Well, that's true, right?
I listened to it.
Yeah, which,
When I was young.
oh, that's a name, right?
Yes.
You've been on the. I remember.
Well, there are actually two bands. Each of the last 2 years. Each challenge.
Have a vision of what's gonna happen.
Think through.
I don't get it. So we're trying to actually,
They have always wanted.
Do you have any other people who staff like that you actually don't Mr. General?
Many people should go on the show. I'd be not a billion. You, a couple of dozen anyway.
Yeah. You should text. Just
I hate to see, I might listen to it once. I think I'll listen to it, stop picking.
I'm giving them a decade. In my career. Speak to you.
Different people listen to different things. It's hard to measure that stuff.
And we don't trust. That's because of what happened.
Well, it's nice to know. Whatever it is. You have. Elizabeth.
I know.
She's kind of like chat one. She's
I would have trying to explain. There's a way where we get, if he comes,
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah.
she comes in for, and works for us for a year or two. And then she goes to the university.
Right, we talked about that.
She's good.
She's been here for.
You know, 3 or 4 months. But no, we don't have a replacement order. And Boston Media is now covering, as he was covering East Haven, Orange, and Woodbridge, and now he's covering West Haven, Woodbridge, and Hamden. And I don't know, it's hard, I'm not sure. It's like when they ask me, when they start asking me about, you know, police and board of ed things, it's like, you know, you do realize that although Brian covered Alders and the board of ed at the same time, it's just insane because they meet at the same time.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah.
There's always a conflict, there's always.
Three times. Thing is, that there's readers out there, but.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
That makes sense.
My first gig here was covering more.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff to take care of. There's actual rules there. It's very, we used to have the highest. Orange had the highest penetration rate, the highest level of percentage of subscribers. Of any county. Yeah, that was like,
And they don't really have other.
People started reaching the 50 range. There's a chain of. Stuff. Between the first time I covered East Day, the second time, they made all these inroads because they register wasn't there.
What do you think you're ready to do? You got specific.
I probably don't share about it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I just wrote that they bought it.
Yeah.
People aren't off that.
Yeah. I know, the meter. It's fun whenever they pull out the tangible thing.
You know, I think 95% of the world thinks that if your meter's broken, they're not gonna get you.
I know. This is.
And she came out and said, the ordinance says you're not supposed to cover your it's broken.
I feel like you should.
But it's like, it's worth writing a story just to tell people that.
Yeah, I think John tried
But that's important to know. Appeal, 9 out of 10 times, they're not gonna.
But also they say if it's your first time. Right.
I got to during one of these meetings not too long ago.
Really, yeah.
I took that sucker in there. I said, I'm just covering the meeting. I got the stupid app on my phone. I extended it like twice. It told me that I couldn't extend it anymore. So, it tells you can't extend it anymore beyond like 8 o'clock. I said, I thought the thing was cut off at 8 o'clock. Did they? And then I got a ticket at, it's like 8:22 or something like that.
Then you spend it back.
That's always been a big problem with us. They see ticket revenue as a growth, economic development. I mean, hello, that's what makes everybody not want to come. That's because they say, let's go shop in Guilford or Bradford. They don't ticket you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We are now back in session. We will now proceed to the fourth item on our agenda, which is proposed agreement between the City of New Haven and Continuum of Care to manage and operate a homeless shelter on Foxen Boulevard. And I see packets of paper being prepared for us. Mr. Sipso, my board. Thank you. Good evening, thank you for being here. Now that you're all settled and you've got papers distributed, please give us your names and addresses for the record, please. And these microphones, this one's being a little bit temperamental, but you can swing the arms rather than move the base. And so we'll take names and addresses, maybe starting to my right.
Okay. Velma George, 347 Mill Rock Road, Hamden.
Jim Ferraz, and that's 109 Legion Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Carlos Sosa Lombardo, 54 Cooper Place, New Haven, Connecticut.
John Lebenek, 109 Legion Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Patty Walker, 109 Legion Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. I'm assuming it's our work address you want or home?
We'll take it.
Home.
You can give either, but that'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, others. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight about this important project. We have had a lot of conversations about why this service is much needed. You have seen the housing crisis firsthand, and every day are listening to your constituents, or most vulnerable neighbors. While we're seeing an increased number of one-house community members across the state, the City of New Haven Board of Elders took action to mitigate the effects of this crisis by enhancing the city's capacity to provide emergency housing. You guys did this on October 2nd by approving the purchase of the of the hotel located at 270 Foxen Boulevard. This is extremely important, especially given that the eviction rates in the city are way past pandemic levels, and that over 50% of our families have a housing cost burden, which means they're paying over 30% of their income in housing. I thank you all for taking this crisis seriously, and I appreciate the time you have given me and my partners to talk about our proposal. My department went through a request for quote/request for proposal process in which we selected Continuum of Care Incorporated to operate the shelter 270 Foxen Boulevard. Continuum of Care has been a great partner with years of experience serving the population. Their application stood out because they show financial and operational capacity to run 24/7 services at the facility. They propose a staffing structure with the necessary supervision by contributing $675,000 in in-kind services over 2 years and 6 months. They propose to integrate the emergency housing program at 270 Foxen Boulevard with the crisis response system to be able to identify people with higher needs at the time of intake and transfer them to a more appropriate facility level of care when needed. Oftentimes, people who are unhoused go undiagnosed and may hinder their ability to secure housing and stay housed. Continuum's strategic leverage of resources will provide an additional layer of safety net for those who need additional support. They also have a robust training component that is required for all staff members. They are trained in areas of behavioral health, substance use, boundaries, transparency, customer service, person-centered planning, stigma, and confidentiality. They also complete training on trauma principles, CPR, and de-escalation. Last but not least, Continuum Care is flexible about the use of space. If the demand for shelter services changes, then the agency has the capacity to change the operations to support families with children. Before I dive into more details, it is important that I acknowledge the timeline that we're working under. The Connecticut Department of Housing has given us an award letter that is contingent upon execution of a contract with a service provider. In addition, we must be able to execute a contract with Continuum of Care by November to give them enough time to recruit and train staff and procure goods and services needed to stand up operations by December. Our goal is to be able to help as many unhoused community members as quickly as possible ahead of the harsh winter season. Within this context, I'm respectfully seeking discharge from the Finance Committee for Board of Alders approval to enter a 2-year, 6-month agreement with Continuum of Care Incorporated in the amount of $3,500,000 to implement the emergency housing program at 270 Folsom Boulevard and utilize $2 million from ARPA funding to execute the contract. The contract will run from December 1 through June 30th, 2026. And again, I'm seeking discharge so the full Board of Alders can vote at their next meeting. Before we run into the next phases, I just want to give you an overview of how the presentation is going to be broken down today. We're going to have our selected provider do a presentation about their envision operations at the site. Then we're going to have Velma talk about, go over the contract details, and I'll take it over for a quick summary at the end. So with that being said, I will pass it on to Patty Walker and her team.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I believe, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I believe you're now referring to this presentation.
Yes.
Starting with the big blue page. Haven to Home Transforming Emergency Housing, correct?
Correct.
In the future, page numbers.
You
My
know,
multi-page decks always have page numbers.
I apologize for that.
That's all right.
We saw that, thought we fixed it, and I guess we did not.
Please.
Thank you for having us here. I'm Patty Walker. I'm the CEO of Continuum of Care, and actually have been so for 40 years, so been around a long time. Continuum is a long-standing organization of 57 years. It started in 1966. It provides a huge array of residential support services, housing support services, outpatient clinics, all kinds of case management services, 24-hour and non-24-hour support for individuals who have mental health issues, autism, substance abuse, homelessness, and just about anything, intellectual disabilities, etc. We are statewide. I'm going to be as quick as possible. If you turn to the next page, we are one of the larger community housing providers in the state, actually probably one of the largest social service organizations in the state. Just so you have this information, the budget for Continuum is $57 million annually. We have over 50 residential programs across the state. What's underneath here you will see are those that are of most interest to us tonight, is those that are based in New Haven. Our funding, in addition to coming from the city of New Haven, comes from DEMIS, DDS, DSS, the Veterans Administration, and private fundraising. We have over 900 employees, and we service approximately 2,400 individuals a year. A real thumbnail sketch. What you see listed here are the programs that we have currently and long-term operational in the city of New Haven. We have 2 crisis programs on Edgewood Avenue, 30 years. We have 3 veterans step-down programs on Maple Street, Norton Parkway, and Winthrop Avenue. We have just been awarded the REST, which is the Rapid Evaluation, Stabilization, and Treatment Program from DEMIS, which we're very excited because we think it's going to be an amazing collaborative program with this new program. We have non-24-hour programs on Blake Street, Diamond Street, Ella Grassville Boulevard, Norton Parkway, Brownell, and Auburn Street. and 24-hour programs on Blake Street, 2 on Howard Avenue, Fountain Street, and we have 2 HUD programs, one on Batter Terrace and the other on Sheldon Avenue. We provide stability to most of the neighborhoods that we are in. We are in neighborhoods that are often compromised regarding safety and life, etc. And we have found, as the neighbors have found, that we provide a stabilizing force in most of the neighborhoods that we reside in, and that is one of our goals when we provide programs. Most of that, I think, is due to the on-site staff, the property management, and the general oversight of our programs. Should I think you're doing, or John's doing it?
Hi, so the philosophy of Continuum, we provide quality services in a home-like environment, non-institutional, which promotes people's self-worth, personal pride, and community involvement. We're also accredited by CARF to meet the highest standards in care of person served and environment. When we're looking at the transformative approach to the housing crisis, all of our services as an organization and the services that I oversee, being the crisis services, are short-term in nature and discharge focused. So what that means is just our discharge planning always starts on day one, knowing that people are going to be with us for a short period of time. So whatever the nature of that environment is, we're planning those types of discharges, whether it's housing focused or to continue on to treatment somewhere. We're meeting people where they are at, taking a non-judgmental, compassionate approach, trauma-informed. We have a lot of partnerships and collaborations, which is the reason why I think our programs have been very successful. Working in crisis services, we've established very good relationships with the police and with Yale Emergency Room in St. Raphael's, because those are the folks we're interacting with, so we consider them almost part of the team if we're going to work together on working with these individuals. My experience has been, I've been with Continuum for almost 20 years now, and I've seen that the longer people stay engaged in your services, not necessarily in treatment, but just in your services and knowing that you're there to help, the more apt they are to seek you out for support, and the more apt they are to kind of follow through with the recommendations. So why the hotel model? I was fortunate to, when we kind of forecasted that there were a lot of changes coming with our crisis response system, I was fortunate to be able to travel to a couple of different parts of the country to visit their REST models that they have, specifically in Arizona and Colorado, have been highlighted as very successful models. And the housing shelters were integrated within that crisis response. And a lot of what in my research and visiting other parts of the country, especially during COVID, people have recognized that this non-congregate approach, this less institutional approach, data-wise, provided much more benefits in terms of discharging, being successful with placing people into permanent housing, their engagement in services, their follow-through, everything in the study had suggested that these hotel models operate much better than your standard congregate style shelter, which is usually non-24 cots, very institutional. How to work beyond the service system. Continuum has direct access to different housing options within our service system for individuals with complex needs. Kind of what Patty was alluding to is that we have different levels of care for different various populations and needs, and that's kind of one of the things, the way our crisis programs have operated over the years was to really identify where people are going to be successive, why they've been falling through the cracks, and what kind of needs do they need in terms of services. So identifying people with these types of issues helps us to kind of coordinate where this person needs to be. And for example, we have 12-hour programs where we have case managers and life skills specialists that work with people to gain the skills needed to manage their own permanent housing. So our goal is always to move people towards their highest level of functioning and to teach them, you know, the ways of budgeting their money and cleaning and use of downtime is a big one. So providing them with those skills until they're ready to move on to their own independence, that's something we have access to internally. And then just having access to our crisis services, having the Compass program, the relationships with the emergency room, we have this kind of coordinated system that we're looking at to really be able to identify people's needs and to work with our community partners to get them the appropriate level of care. So let Jim take one.
So the next slide that we see is the service system integration. And what that pertains to is taking the various systems that we work in, homeless services, the CAN, our police services, first responders, hospital system, our DOC system, all those different systems. And what Continuum brings to the table here is that we're integrated with all of those systems. When a homeless person or a person who's at risk of being homeless, being evicted, their first call would be to 211. And that's a place where they will get referred to a homeless shelter if they need emergency housing, or to one of the agencies that can provide rapid rehousing, rent assistance. And in most cases, when people are calling 211, they are homeless, and so they will be referred to a homeless shelter. In this case, if we're operating this hotel model, which we're calling for now Haven at Home, we have all the services around that. All of those in orange are operated by Continuum Care. So if an individual needs outpatient services, for the most part, if you don't have your own clinic, it could take months to get your first outpatient appointment. We have our own clinic, so if we identify someone in high need, we'll be able to get them seen right away. We have a housing resource coordinator. That person will work on accessing various levels of care. Not everyone will be ready for that permanent supportive housing where they can live on their own. They might need sober living, rest home, RCH, residential care home. There's other levels of care. And the goal is really to identify what is the appropriate level of care so that the person is successful. We've often heard stories about people being housed in an apartment but not being able to keep up with it, start hoarding, not be able to keep up with the maintenance, cleaning, and then end up being evicted. And that's the worst outcome. And so all of these different services around this, all in orange, would be what we would be able to access for every individual who's referred to us. And going back to the hotel model, it's also for those individuals who do not do well in your mainstream shelter system. So someone with LGBTQ issues who have difficulty living with others, this would be an ideal set. A family member, both mother and father, where they often have to be separated because of the gender shelter. They could also stay together. So we'll be able to meet those needs.
You can also keep their pets. One of the things that we find is very important, I know it is to me, is if you have a dog or a cat, it's very important to
just make sure you speak to the mic.
Sorry. Many times people who have a pet, it's their family to them, it's very important to them, will not go into a shelter because that means they have to get rid of their pet. This model allows them to bring their pet with them. And we'll have policies and protocols around those pets.
So on the next page, you see all of our partnerships. Every one of these agencies, we either have an MOU or we've worked with or we have contracts with. So we are very integrated in the DEMA system, the Community Services Network, CMHC. We have an MOU with Elm City Communities for housing vouchers, Section 8. So we've worked with each of these agencies, and then Continuum Integrated Behavioral Health is our outpatient clinic.
As I mentioned earlier, that housing and discharge is usually focused on intake. The housing focus permeates all services from leadership to janitorial staff. On day one with the support of staff, each guest is going to create a plan to obtain some level of housing. And with ongoing peer support, which our agency does operate our own peer services, every guest will actively engage with working on their plans.
Some of the benefits of housing focus is that the table you see on the left is just one example of a savings to a community. Housing 10 individuals in 10 homes over 6 months. Comparatively, they saved over $600,000 compared to when the person was homeless prior to being housed, being in and out of the hospital, picked up by police, custody issues, and going in and out of various shelters.
So security, I've been able to tour the hotel, and it is in good condition. In the way that we envisioned things was to separate, not to separate, but to break down the hotel there on 2 floors into separate quads where staff would be assigned to certain quads, and then identifying where people go into those quads. The hotel is with a sprinkler system, has alarms, window guards, privacy fencing is something that we recommended. Trained staff was mentioned earlier. We have our own training department. Removal of guests in cases that jeopardize safety. We have policies. We tend to see this come up in our different levels of care and have policies in place. The hotel is loaded with, I think, 25 camera system that's pretty well up to date. We have cameras in a lot of our different programs, and close coordination with the PD and with the Elm City Compass program, which we operate as well. We also looked at putting supervisors on every shift. That was something that we seemed to be very successful in terms of managing shifts and having support staff have access to a supervisor, which includes first shift, second shift, and third shift. Extensive training in trauma care, verbal de-escalation, and other evidence-based methods. We are a handle with care facility that has a train the model. I'm trained, and we have several other staff that are trained and offer this training ongoing. We put a therapist clinician office, a satellite office is what we would call it, to our clinic, so that there is a clinician available at the shelter for folks that may be identified that need this service. Jim had mentioned our housing coordinator, which offers assistance in finding, locating housing, and providing security deposits. A strong influence on peer support staff. We've identified a number of support staff internally that have lived experience, and also looked at the basic support structure of the direct care staff being all peers and having our director of peer services on site as well. Access to nursing, we just established a nursing department about 2 years ago. After our home care agency was no longer in existence, and we now have a full array of nursing. Part of that nursing is tied to our crisis services and will be in our rest center, as well as part of a collaboration with the Compass team that allows for an outreach nurse. Compass satellite office, and then cleaning and maintenance staff are in the staffing patterns as well.
Next page is our staffing per shift. But just looking at the totals, we'll have 5 staff on duty per shift, second shift, and then 3 on duty overnight. There's always an administrator on call, and then a backup, and then our CEO. So there's always depth there. And these are just some of the job titles of the individuals who'll be working various shifts. RSS stands for Recovery Support Specialists. Those are our peer counselors.
Rules and expectations. There will be no use of substances permitted on the premises. We are very much a non-smoking organization. None of our facilities allow smoking inside any of our buildings. No weapons clearly will ever be permitted in the facility, and there will be a way to screen for that. No aggressive or violent behavior will be allowed. The guests are expected to maintain their own rooms and assist with the maintenance of common areas where it's appropriate. Again, the pets, if you have a pet, you'll need to care for it properly. We will have assigned areas for those pets that you will have to use. And all guests have to adhere to the safety protocols and procedures that we set.
The next slide, partnering with neighbors. Every time we open a program, we always do canvassing of the area to let neighbors know that we're here and to ask questions and to be available, provide our cell phone numbers if there are issues or concerns. That is just a staple of what we do, and we've already done that with the hotel, just in terms of introducing ourselves as potential candidates for the hotel. We were setting up a community advisory board similar to that of the Compass program to get feedback from the community. We've found that having this board has been extremely successful in getting feedback on what the community needs. Monthly check-ins with the PD. We sometimes have daily check-ins with the PD, and given that this is a kind of a new service system, that's something that we would definitely be incorporating. And then we had put here the two community liaisons, myself and our clinical director, which we provided pamphlets and business cards to some of the area neighbors.
At this point, I'm going to go over some of the contract details for this program. As you can see on your sheet, this is the this budget, the yearly budget will be $1.5 million. And the key thing I'd like you guys to take away from this is that in addition to the $1.5 million, Continuum is going to be including over $300,000 in-kind services to be able to sustain these operations. And this would include staff time, overhead, and supplies. As far as the contract with operations framework, shelter and case management services will be provided for approximately 112 individuals. Individuals will be at least 18 years old or families without minor children. On-site services will include case management, behavioral care, behavioral health treatment, employment services, basic needs, food, and primary care. Also, the length of stay will be anywhere from 65 to 120 days in this program. And just a note, the current statewide average is about 85 days. Also included in the contract would be the Department of Housing shelter requirements. So some of these requirements would be the admission criteria, and part of DOH's admission criteria is they do not require compliance with treatment as long as there is commitment to working towards a housing plan. And basically, they're not going to force people to go into substance treatment. The focus is going to be housing plan, because we are a housing first program. Also, applicants may not be rejected based on poor or lack of credit, poor rental history, minor criminal convictions, or other factors that might indicate a lack of housing readiness. Those are things that they won't be rejected based on. Denial, people who have a history of domestic violence involving current participants, also people who pose a risk to themselves or others, and the use of drugs on the premises will be strictly prohibited. Also in the contract would be some community relations requirements. So as John mentioned, there'll be a community advisory board, monthly meetings with Betsy Ross, Woodward School Administration, working closely with the host alder and also alders in the contiguous wards. Monthly check-ins with the New Haven PD district manager in that area. And they'll have 2 community liaisons. As John mentioned, it would be him, John Leviniak, and Jennifer Vargas would be the community liaisons for the agency. And I'll turn it over to Carlos.
Thank you, Velma. Now in terms of funding sources, the first funding source that we will use is from the Connecticut Department of Housing grant. We're gonna use $1.5 million out of the $4.3 million grant as approved by the Board of Alders on October 2nd. The second source of money will be at $2 million ARPA allocation. The total contract amount over 2 years, 6 months is $3.5 million. Then in summary, Alders, we are here seeking a discharge from the family. So the Board of Alders can vote to enter a 2-year, 6-month agreement with Continuum of Care Incorporated to operate the Haven to Home Emergency Housing Program at 270 Folsom Boulevard, New Haven, Connecticut, and to allocate $2 million from ARPA funding to execute the multi-year contract with Continuum of Care Incorporated. Thank you very much, and we are here to take any questions you may have.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm grateful for the time you put into preparing this material. And now we'll have questions from committee members about this request. Alder Phillip.
I'm gonna just grab this microphone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I think I may have more questions, but just 2 easy ones. What's the program gonna be called on the building? Have you decided on? Because right now it says Days In, so I imagine you're gonna take that down.
We're not gonna have Days In, that's for sure.
And there's gonna be another name put on, so will it say?
Continuum Haven to Home?
Yeah, or will it be City of New Haven somehow on there? What's it gonna say on the building?
So we're still playing with the marketing, and one of the ideas that Continuum gave us was to name it Haven to Home, Continuum Haven to Home, the emergency housing program. If we want to sort of stay out, use language also the right way here. We have seen over time shelters being stigmatized and also being provided in a very institutionalized way. So we want to do here something very different starting from the beginning. So we're calling this an emergency housing program instead of a shelter.
Okay. Haven to Home almost sounds like a funeral parlor.
Kind of feedback we need.
Well, that is the kind of feedback we want, thank you.
Yeah, just, it's a little creepy. It's a little creepy. And my, other question is, so I thought at first we were doing 6 weeks, but maybe that's not, maybe I misheard that, only wrong information. So we're doing at least 85.
At least 60.
Which is but the average is about 85.
That's right. Sir.
Right, but that makes a lot more sense than trying to get people to transition into, okay. Makes a lot more sense to me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all for further questions from colleagues. Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard during your presentation the things that won't disqualify someone like credit. So they're not going to be running people credit at all, correct? Okay. And I'm sorry, I know you said it, you said credit and you said something else. That they won't be.
For rental history.
For rental history. Okay, thank you. Yep.
Well.
That makes sense. Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further questions from colleagues on this proposal? Alder Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many occupants would be, or guests would be in this facility at one time?
We estimate that we will have up to 112 people.
112?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And I'm seeing on the list, it says 5 staff per shift. That's where I'm having a hang up. Is 5 staff to manage 112 people, you think it's adequate?
I'll take this one. Part of the work that we really focus on is peers and people who've been formerly homeless. The other piece is, the key is assessing every individual to see, are they able to live here fairly independently? And we have other resources, our crisis programs that are more appropriate for people who might not be quite ready, who might have just stopped using drugs or alcohol, or might need to be assessed for psychiatric symptoms, who might not be quite stable. This program, we're really looking for people who are stable, working towards ending the cycle of homelessness. And I think, again, what Continuum brings is that value added of being able to assess and appropriately place them where they need to be, so that we don't have chaos in a place where people are trying to recover and work towards working towards ending their homeless cycle.
And I may just add, DOA, the Department of Housing guidelines, they expect that providers will not exceed the client ratio of 1 to 40. Right now, we're having a client ratio, with this proposal, we're having a client ratio of 1 to 23, which is right on evidence-based practices.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Singh. Alder Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John, can you explain in regards to, one thing I know about Continuum, once you get in your system, that's an awesome system to get in, because you're always in the system, you're always going to get help. You're part of a big family. So can you just explain a little bit more in detail what happens to a person once they hit that 90-day, right? What happens? Because there are some people out here who feel as though, okay, what if they hit their 90-day and the program doesn't find them housing? Do they kick them back up on the street? Can you just explain what that would look like? Because I know that you went through this list of wonderful programs that you have throughout the city. Can you just demonstrate what could happen to a person?
Absolutely. So we experience at times, well, first I'll say that it's not going to come to the 90th day and then, us or staff figuring out what to do. This process, when I said discharge starts on day 1, that process is beginning from day 1. So in instances where people may be resistant to services or not want services, we have several mechanisms in place, and we're always working with individuals to establish what their needs are. What are you looking for? And when we encounter some issues that may be counterproductive or not in line, we're trying to meet individuals where they're at. We're trying to contract with them and come up with ideas of what's going to work with you. And part of our guidelines and our intakes always talks about discharge planning. So I think we've been very successful. Our crisis program's length of stay is 14 days. And we've managed to keep that length of stay. And part of that is working with the community providers, and working with landlords. One of the things we've done very successfully is when landlords aren't particularly, or if they're worried about something, we're there. We're not going anywhere. So if people have a difficult time when they get into housing or sober housing, we are a resource to them to take them back in some capacity. As Jeanette mentioned, kind of we're that safety net. So if this doesn't work, having this ongoing relationship with landlords has been very beneficial because they trust that we're going to be there if things don't work out. Eviction is the worst thing that can happen because it's not only hard to find housing, but now that you have an eviction on your record, forget about finding housing again. It just creates more barriers for individuals that already have barriers. So we have this process in place where we're always working towards an identified plan. Getting assigned a case manager, getting a clinician involved, and working with the person. And if there's resistance or there's refusals, we contract with people. I've been with the agency for almost 20 years, and I could probably count on my hands the times where we've had removals. And that usually had to do with people's judgment and requiring maybe a hospitalization because their judgment is impaired to some capacity. So it happens from time to time where people start to resist or aren't in agreement with a plan, but we're always identifying those things early on. It's about early identification, putting a plan in place, and always just staying on top of it. So I hope that answers.
Oh, yes, thank you for that. One other question. What does security look like on the grounds of this new proposed hotel? Because like you just said, sometimes people, their minds are impaired or they just mental health, period. And you need security. So what does that look like for this location?
So our crisis, our more acute programs or emergency programs have cameras to view, having checks on people. We have programs that sometimes do 15-minute checks on folks. We have programs that have one-to-ones. And then as Jim had mentioned, through that triage process, really identifying those people that are ready for that level of care. Breaking the hotel into these quads makes it more manageable for one staff to be able to constantly check on people. And one of the things we identified in our plan was to really, when we identify people that may be more at risk, if we haven't triaged them out to rehab or a detox or a crisis bed or the rest program, if we haven't identified that already and it becomes an issue, we talked about one of those quads being a more, we're checking on folks more often, being able to manage that in an appropriate way, where maybe the fourth quad is checks 3 times a day as opposed to every hour or a few times throughout the day.
Also, to add to that, often when folks are on the waiting list with the CAN for a housing voucher, and then they go off to, say, a substance abuse treatment program, they kind of get lost and they get reported as not able to be contacted. So then their name kind of falls off. And unfortunately, they remain homeless. Where we work with folks, we keep track of all those individuals throughout the service system so that if I know someone's at Stonington Institute or Mountainside, I at least have our pulse on where that person is so we can keep them active on the waiting list. So once they're ready to return, we can keep them on the kind of path to becoming housed. And that's one piece that I've seen in the service system, that there's that barrier of having multiple systems. The behavioral health system does not communicate with the homeless system, and people fall through the cracks for that reason.
Can I just add one thing about security? We are invested in keeping the folks in the programs safe. It's probably more of an issue that we're going to keep the folks in the building safe, and we have extensive experience with how we do that with our other programs, particularly in New Haven. And right now we have a problem on Winthrop, in this particular section on Winthrop, which is not good at all in terms of criminal activity. And so we are, the same thing we're going to be doing to this is we're going to have to put up a fence around the perimeter, which stops a lot of traffic of people who shouldn't be on the property from walking through the property, hanging out in a parking lot, doing anything that they don't belong on the property, they shouldn't be on the property. So for us, we find that it's far more that people from the outside create a problem more so than our folks that we're serving are going up and creating a problem that we have to worry about security for, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your presentation, and thank you for that. That was actually one of my questions. That's how we're going to keep our guests safe from anything outside, because that was also a concern that was brought up during our deliberations for purchasing the hotel. So thank you, because that's important too. Now, how do you determine the guests? I know you have the 211 system, but how do you determine? It's only 57 rooms and it's only 112 people that you hope to house there. How do you pick and choose?
I'm gonna have Jim or Carlos.
Yeah, I can jump in it. So the way the CAN system works is a first come, first served basis. So they can create a list of referrals that will go to the hotel in this case, or to continue if they get the contract. There is not a way to pick and choose. It's a random list of first come, first served people, basically. That meets certain criteria, like non-company minors in this case.
Okay.
I think this might help too. It is not going to operate like a typical shelter, so you're not going to have people lined up waiting for service. That is not going to happen here. You are never going to see that. People will come via an appropriate referral system. So it will be very organized, and the admissions will be very organized, and there will not be people waiting outside for services.
And I think one of the goals Jim and I have been talking about too is to really sit down and work with the CAN, because this is a different model. We want to try to establish some understanding of that and how it's going to better serve our community. So, understanding that there is a process already in place, we're hoping this is something different. And I think one of the reasons why we're so excited about it is because it's taking away some of the barriers and fragmentation that we've seen, operating and working in the field. I think sitting down with the CAN and working with them to establish who will best be served by us is going to be one of our goals.
Just wanted to add to that, while we're doing this process of vetting this group to run the hotel, I'm also in conversation with the CAN, and what we're doing is fine-tuning our shelter wait list, because that's the list that the CAN operates from. And so we're making sure that we fine-tune our shelter wait list. So we're talking with our outreach workers that are out in the community, as well as folks that's in the warming center, making sure that people that want a shelter bed will make sure that their outreach workers will work with them to make sure that they're on the list to be able to move into the hotel.
Okay. And I guess I don't understand the at least 18 years old or families without minors. I thought some of the rooms were going to be for families. What is the definition of family in this case?
So in this case, it's with HUD, a family is self-identified. So a family could be two brothers, or they could be a mother and son, adult son, or it could be a couple that considers themselves to be a family. So that's the types of families that we would be doing for this round in the hotel.
So no family with anyone 17 and under.
Correct.
Okay. At this point.
Yeah.
Yes. Can I be unified?
Yeah.
We feel that we want to start without, this is a new model and it's a large program. And as we go on, that may be a pivot that we make in order to serve families that do have children who are minors. But we need to start out without it being that.
Okay. Understood. Thank you for that. And and then I'm just going to get into in the letter different topics, kind of. you mentioned a selection committee that awarded Continuum. Who was part of that committee?
Part of that committee was Eliza Housley, Community Services Administrator, Belmont George, Coordinator for Housing and Homelessness Services, and myself, Executive Director of the Parking Resilience. And
you obviously Continuum met the RFP, RFQ. How many applications did you get?
We had 3 applications for the shelter services.
And out of those 3 apps, obviously Continuum met the qualifications that best meet our needs. And of course, you guys have a ton of experience, and we appreciate that. And we appreciate your in-kind services as well that you'll be providing the House Insecure. Will you also be working with some of our developers that have promised to support low-income housing or affordable housing? I don't want to say affordable housing. Is there going to be any relationship with some of these developers to see what they have available? If some of these guests can't even afford it because the AMI may still be too high, with some of these developers to accommodate, our guests. So is there any discussion with that?
We are very interested in working with any developer who has the ability to develop affordable. In our case, it's got to be deeply affordable housing. We actually have just started a process ourselves today to develop supported housing and hoping to get community investment funds to do that by purchasing 2 large properties in New Haven, which we already partially rent and use for supported housing. And we're hoping to develop 42, I think it's 58 units of supported housing, and we're looking to SIF to help us to do that. Hope that we'll get used.
And that will be the deeply affordable that you mentioned that is needed. Okay. And then, just for clarification, you mentioned the submission that to allocate $2 million from ARPA funding to execute the multi-year contract. I thought we already approved the $5 million. Do we have to approve it again? Maybe, Mr. Chair, I don't know. I'm a little confused with that because we approved $5 million already, plus the $4.3 million of the grant and the funding to purchase the hotel. So is this something else, or is that part of?
Yes, if I can back up a little bit, and maybe Michael Gorman, you can also help me out here a little bit.
Michael, did you think you were going to sit back there? Forward?
You guys forgot.
No, never.
Name and address for the record. Absolutely. Michael Gormany, 45 Jefferson Road, Brantford, Connecticut. With this submission and through Mr. Chair, I think we have to modify the ordinance that was submitted. But what Community Services is asking for is to get $2 million off of the remaining balance that we have in ARPA funding. Right now, the balance is $5.2 million that has not been allocated towards any projects. And as we know, we have to have the full balance of $150 million allocated by December 31st of 2024. So what they're asking for is $2 million off of the remaining balance that the city has available. So you are correct. We reallocated $5 million that was previously approved for the land bank for the purchase, along with $1.9 million as a local contribution, and then this would be another $2 million for the operating costs.
Okay, I'm really confused because I thought all of the funding, the 4.3, please, this isn't for me. I have to ask these questions.
Okay.
For, we have 4.3 million of grant for the services, I thought. 5 million for that we're taking from the land bank to purchase the hotel with the 1.9
correct
or 3, million of surplus funding to help pay for that. So what is this 2 million for?
This 2 million is based on the contract and the proposals that came in. This is basically for the operations of the shelter, of the hotel itself. So everything that you mentioned was really towards the purchase and part of the operations, but there's a gap that we need to fill, which is where the $2 million comes in from ARPA.
I love all these gaps that all of a sudden surprise this finance committee for so many reasons. And
Older Festa, I think you might be confused. So let's just go through this again, because I don't want us to say that we're being surprised if we're not. So I think the 4.3 is something that should be explained, because I think the way you're talking about it, there's like 10 or 12 million dollars here, and there really isn't.
no,
So-
I actually,
But one moment,
4.3.
one moment. Let's have Mr. Gorman explain the full picture.
So actually, I'm gonna switch with Mr. Sosa Lombardo for the application, because CSA applied for the state grant, so they can.
Yeah, so let me clarify, the $4.3 million from the state grant, 1.5 out of that grant will be used for services at 270 Folsom Boulevard. It will pay for a full year of operations at full capacity. Now, we still need some gap funding so that the operations can take costs a little bit beyond the second year. And that's where the ARPA money comes in as the gap funding.
So then the question is, if 1.5 is taken from the 4.3, that would leave 2.8. That 2.8 is for something else.
So that 2.8, some of that money will be used towards rehab of the shelter operations. And the other part of the money, we need DOH approval to use it on other projects as an approval.
Other projects other than the non-congregate shelter.
That's right, sir.
All right, so back to you, Alder Festa.
Okay, so the 4.3 million of the grant, 1.5 million for 1 year. The 2.8 million is for rehab and other projects.
That's right.
What are these other projects?
We have not identified those other projects. It will be other capital projects to increase the capacity of emergency housing that we have in the city.
And how about the cost to bring the hotel up to spec? I forgot the amount at this point. We had it at our last finance meeting. It was just under 300,000, I believe. Is any of this money being used for that?
Yes,
And
from
where?
Some of this money will be used towards that. We are looking at under $400,000 in rehab. That will come out of the 4.3 million.
So, okay, so 4.3 million, 1.5 for the 1 year, 2.8 for rehab, other projects, and bringing the hotel up to snuff.
Rehab is right.
That's rehab.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rehab,
Yeah.
not rehab like mental health or
No.
alcohol.
Treatments.
Okay.
Building.
Not treatment, it's building
projects,
rehab.
that's right.
Wait though, but you said it was under
Under $400,000.
Okay, so the 400K is for bringing the hotel up to snuff and then other projects. And this other 2 million that is being, you're asking us.
So the ARPA funding is, again, like Mr. Sosa Lombardo said, it's because we want to have the operator there on a multi-year period. I mean, we need consistency in operating this project. So what they're looking at was forward thinking as far as from a multi-year perspective. So again, a lot of the $4.9 million was allocated, as Mr. Sosa Lombardo just mentioned, and then the 2 million from ARPA funding gets us into that multi-year period of the operations of the actual space.
Okay, the way it was sold to us is that the amount that was originally requested without this 2 million was to cover a 2.5 year period. That's the way I understood it.
No.
That this was a contract, that this was at least for 2 years. I mean, we could go back to the recording, but I remember something about 2 years, and then we would have to find additional funding, and those were your words.
DOH gave us 2 years to spend the 4.3 million. I think that's where the confusion is coming from.
Okay, so it's the 2 year to spend the 4.3 million. And then we ask the question, what happens after that?
Right, and I'm actually already submitted a prior notification form to the board of alders, letting you guys know that I went after a DOH grant to sustain the services starting the second year. So hopefully we will get that grant.
But you still need this 2 million to, even though there's that grant that will
It's a
allow you.
contingency plan, that's right.
We're just, I still feel like we're just constantly surprised, but, okay, thank you, Mr. No, I am. I didn't realize this. I mean, this has been, but anyway, I'm going to look through my notes, Mr. Chair, and I'll yield to colleagues from here. Thank you.
Alder Festa. Further questions from colleagues? I have a few, just on the topic that Alder Festa was asking about, the $4.3 million. 1.5 of which goes towards the operation of this facility. Some portion of it, 300,000 or something, will go towards the rehabilitation of this structure. The remainder was not available for the operation of this plant.
That's right, sir.
So like the DOH rules wouldn't allow it.
That's right.
But 1.5 is.
Yes, sir.
And that's because when you originally applied for it from the feds, you said that a certain portion of it would be for the operation of this particular facility?
It was a DOH, how they decided to allocate the fund for this.
Okay, so they gave the city an award and said this much will go for this much will go for this much will go for this.
That's right.
Okay, because the obvious question that one might ask if we don't know that particular detail is, well, why allocate $2 million if there's still 2.8 million of funding from the DOH that we could use, but you're telling us we can't.
That's right.
Okay. Although I'm sure there's $2.8 million of services and investments that we need to make on this issue elsewhere in the city for sure. Helpful to understand. Okay, you're correct, Mr. Gormany, that this order before us does not properly make that allocation. We will need to revise it before we vote on it.
Yes, sir.
A
I will
second.
get that to you by next week.
Thank you very much. Cameras. Where would the cameras be? Generally speaking, I don't need to know like the GPS coordinates. I assume you don't want to put cameras in people's rooms. You don't want to leave the privacy. So just a little.
The cameras are in the hallways and around the outside of
Outside
the
of the
building.
building.
Nothing inside.
Nothing inside the rooms, of course. So who monitors those cameras?
Right now, they're located at the front desk, which, we'll do some revising, but usually our director, manager, supervisor on site would have direct access to the cameras.
Thank you. Yep. What are the, I see that there are 3 shifts. I assume one's like 8 to 5, 5 to midnight, midnight to 8. But what are they? That's maybe not exactly what they are.
Yep.
What typically are the shifts?
We have 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7.
Okay, thank you very much. When you said the hotel quads, I assume like you've divided the hotel into quadrants. First floor, second floor, and then you cut it down the middle.
Correct.
And then that makes it easier to patrol those areas.
Yes.
And to have staff assigned to check in with people in particular quadrants.
Yep.
Do you see the quadrants being divided such that there's different levels of support per quadrant? And this will be like this particular quadrant will be the least amount of supervision and this other quadrant will be the most? Is
That would be
kind
the
of
goal,
that would be the goal? Okay. That helps me understand. Thank you. Community Advisory Board. Could you tell us more about that? Have you done these kinds of boards before in connection with other facilities? How have they worked? What's the composition? That kind of thing.
I can jump in, sir. The Community Advisory Board will be staffed by my department. We are looking to have the other of the ward sitting in there, others from continuous work, sitting in there, up to 6 neighbors, service provider, staff members from my department, and from continuum of care shelter operations as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that we will meet on a monthly basis to address issues that may arise around the neighborhood, quality of life, and any other feedback that neighbors feel like we need to know. At the same time, to also be able to cover issues on a daily basis. As you may have heard, continuum care provided 2 community liaisons as point of contacts as well to sort of complement the community advisory board role.
And when I said have you had the experience of working with these before, you both nodded your heads. So I'd like to hear from you too.
Well, with the Compass program in particular, it was a pretty rounded and very active board that has been extremely beneficial in terms of guidance, community expectations, events, getting the word out where it needs to get out, recommendations, which it's been a very active board that has helped, I think, the success of the Compass program. Everybody's working together. It seems to work well. And then aside from that, we've done the management care meetings in different areas that our programs are in, just to be a part of that as well, to be available.
The community advisory board for the Compass program actually is quite huge. It's very diverse and a tremendous large number of people that were are very invested in the program. It's been really quite common.
Have you had experience with community advisory boards for smaller entities like a facility in a particular neighborhood? Because the Compass is a citywide initiative.
Correct. Not community advisory boards, but we are always, we have liaisons. We give our cell phone numbers. It's like I said, we participate in the neighborhood meetings. I'm on the board of the West River Neighborhood Services. We have, almost every neighborhood group is one of our staff participates in that.
Great, thank you very much. And my last question, no, I'm sorry, I have 2 more. One is about a concern that came up in our public hearing regarding the purchase of the hotel, which is that it's located next to a very, very busy street.
Yes.
And I recognize that once people leave the property, they're not really your responsibility. And yet, once they, it's not a safe street. So you've seen the facility, you've seen the street. What thoughts do you have about the challenges that poses to your operation?
So we talked about a lot of different ideas in terms of providing the resource to the guests on where to catch the bus, to educate them on safety protocols. We had asked the city if it was possible to do arrows, either spray painted arrows for safety reasons. We asked about cones. All of our programs have vehicles as well to assist with transportation, because as I think Jeanette alluded to, once guests are in our program, we do see them as our responsibility, so we are going to care for them as so. I think safety would be part of the ongoing process, the education with intake and ongoing education, maybe even assistance to walking to the bus if we have concerns about somebody. I think one of the things we're just very creative about setting things up in a way that's going to maintain the residents' safety.
Thank you for that response. My last question is in regards to a few references in your presentation to clinical services. One was the REST program, which is kind of like a clinical intake and assessment of their needs. And apparently you have a facility on Winthrop Avenue. Is that a fully functioning clinic? Is it medical care in addition to mental behavioral health, or is it just mental behavioral? What does that involve?
Yep. So we have an outpatient clinic, and then we have satellite offices in some of our programs. So Winthrop is not actively running yet. The clinical services provided for that particular model will include a level of medical care overseen by a doctor. And we are going to have nurses on staff as well as an APRN. So there is some level of medical triaging we can do and then deem appropriate of where the person needs to go for that care. And when I say, basic kind of wound care, identifying risks, I think our nurses that we currently have in our programs are very good at doing that in terms of, and then knowing which resource to add to go towards, whether it's an urgent care clinic, a follow-up doctor's appointment, or if it's an ER.
Great. Thank you very much. That helps me understand it better. Any further questions from colleagues on this proposal?
allocate monies for this contract. Alder Walker-Myers.
Just one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're talking about getting people stable housing, right? And in order to have stable housing, you at some point you got to be able to pay for it, even if it is deeply affordable. Is it a job aspect to any of the work that you do? Because it's not like in my neighborhood where you guys are, it's like houses and residential, but you actually have an opportunity with a lot of businesses. So is it like a job component to what you do, or no?
We have a peer program, so we, my ongoing thing that I've always told clients is if you stick around long enough, we'll put you on payroll, and that's what we do. We have a pretty large peer program that employs peers, trains them to be active in our program. We also have an apprenticeship program that teaches our folks how to, certain job skills that they may need, and then helps them to attain employment after that. So I think we have a pretty robust system in place, and we're hoping that this helps to expand on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Walker-Myers. Further questions from colleagues on this proposal? The item before us. Further questions from colleagues? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and for the work that you do. And you may be excused.
Thank you, others.
And before we move on to the next item, let me ask if there's a member of the public here who wishes to testify on this item. And for a second time, is there a member of the public here who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, we're going to move to the final item on our agenda, which is a monthly financial report. Very, very early in the new fiscal year. I'm sure it tells us a lot about the year ahead. Mr. Gorman, name and address for the record.
Sure, Michael Grundy, 45 Jefferson Road, Connecticut, City Acting Controller.
And you have some paper for us. Thank you very much.
All right. So what you have before you is the month of August for the monthly financial report. As you can see, based on the front page, we are projecting a balanced fiscal year through the second month of the fiscal year. As I mentioned in the past, we really use the first quarter of the fiscal year to really assess where we're going and how we're trending. That's primarily when we can gauge overtime usage, salary savings, tax collections were due the first half of the year. So, you know, the first few monthlies are really the base of what we see for the fiscal year. And then after the first quarter, we really start to project out where we're going to see, what we're going to see. So looking at, and these were exported from the monthly. So looking at what is labeled page 35, which is the second page, really starts our tax collection. So you'll see that year to date, we collected about 164.7 million of the budget for tax collections, which is the first half that's due for the year. So again, a good start. That's about 50% of the budget that we collected, which would match because most taxes, unless you owe less than a certain dollar amount, are due in July and January. Looking at the next page of the revenue side, there really aren't any variances with the exception of two items: education cost sharing and tiered pilot. So when we did the budget, we were looking at an increase in education cost sharing possibly, but that ended up happening in the alliance portion of education cost sharing. But we were also able to mitigate that because what happened was in the governor's budget, we were actually getting less tiered pilot than what ended up being proposed in the legislature budget. So sometimes with state revenue, you will see a variance because our budget process is before their budget process, right? So there are sometimes some variances in what is passed between the Board of Alder budget versus what actually comes out in the state legislature. But in this case, we actually ended up getting enough tiered pilot to sort of cover what we thought our anticipated education cost sharing would be. On the next page, again, the primary source here is building permits and meter receipts. In working with transportation, traffic, and parking through the first few months, we are seeing a leveling of what we did last year. So basically hand in hand in what we've seen in meter receipts. And building permits does fluctuate. It depends on the projects and the time of season going on. But in talking to economic development, there are some projects in the pipeline that will happen that as long as they stay on target for this fiscal year, we should be able to meet budget. Again, all of this during the year, as you know, fluctuates. But right now we're trending on target. So looking at the next page, which is labeled page 38. The area here that we're looking at is we did budget $5.5 million in American Rescue Plan funding. Again, that number will fluctuate depending on how we are trending during the year. As you know, last fiscal year, we trended in the right direction and didn't end up using any of that funding in the American Rescue Plan. But at the moment, we do have it allocated as being used for the fiscal year. That may change as we go along. So on the revenue side, we are looking at balancing revenues. And then on the expenditure side, I am going to go to what is labeled page 42, which kind of just gives a breakdown of all the departments. So we are looking at balancing out most of these, most of the departments. We are looking at a few variances here on this page, primarily in our self-insurance fund. That's our insurance policies. Again, that number, that's one of the numbers we're going to really look at on the expense side as our policies are coming due for this fiscal year. That is also dictated by the market. Unfortunately for insurance, it's not a great market on the municipal side at the moment, and we are seeing some increases in policies. So that's a line that we're going to continue to look at. Right now, the Board of Education is projected on budget. Again, we do work with their CFO and their business office to see how they're monitoring throughout the year. So again, that may fluctuate. Excuse me. One thing that this projection does not take into account yet, again, as we go through the first quarter of the year, are salary savings. We still have vacancies. We've heard a presentation from Human Resources. We are certainly working on hiring, testing, and getting these positions filled. So we're going to continue to look at the variances throughout the fiscal year, and we probably will have some salary savings, not probably, but we will have salary savings to offset any potential issues that we may see during the fiscal year. But right now, our projections in management and budget are currently on balance. Page 115 is really the fund that really does dictate as well some of the areas that happen in the general fund, which is our medical self-insurance. We did see an increase in July and August in medical costs. So we're working with Anthem to reconcile those claims as well. again, this is kind of a trend that we seen last year as well, where we actually ended the medical fund in a positive. You know, medical claims is certainly something that you cannot predict. We've seen it fluctuate last fiscal year, where we've seen a few months above the previous year and then some months below the previous year. So again, that's one area that we're watching on the budget side as well. So again, very early in the fiscal year, as we continue to monitor department expenditures, the monthly reports will be reflected to see where we're trending during the fiscal year. So with that, Mr. Chair, I believe that is my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gormley, as always, for your hard work looking after our city finances. Questions from committee members about this monthly financial report? Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't see, or maybe it isn't here. Can you point out NIPS? Do we have a line item for what we've collected or what was allocated to us?
Yes, through the chair, I will certainly get you that. This is really, as you know, the monthly report. As you can see on the last page, it's like 117 pages at this point. So for this presentation, I just kind of print out the summary that I'm gonna give, but I can certainly give you through the chair the page number and the allocation. Because we do report it, it's considered a special fund because there is restrictions on that money that we can use it for. So we count that in the special fund section of the report.
And do you know if we've used any of that funding? And
no, we have not yet.
Okay. And the same thing with the cannabis, because the dispensary, I think right now we only have one that's up and running.
Yes.
With more coming, but they're supposed to give a certain percentage to the neighborhood.
So it's 3% as part of the tax goes to the city in general, and correct to the city that we can use. And again, there's restrictions on that funding as well that can be used based on part of it is the neighborhood that it's located in, but then there's some other uses that is restricted by the state of Connecticut.
Yes, there's like 7 or 8 of them. And do you know if any of that has been?
So that has not been used as well.
Okay.
That has not been used.
Okay. And then regarding transportation, traffic, and parking, I know we have, where would the parking tickets fall under?
Parking tickets fall under parking tags. So
Okay,
if you
so
look,
that is tags. I get confused with the tags because I don't know if it's those meter covers.
so on page 37, we are projecting, because of the trend that we've seen the last few years, we are projecting that budget to have a deficiency in there based on what we've seen last year. But again, I've mentioned that numerous times at these meetings that is something that we're looking at going forward as far as adjusting that number from a budgetary perspective.
Okay. I mean, and I know this isn't for you to really answer, but I see here parking tags, street sweeping is 0. Do we not give out tickets?
So we do. That was a line item in the budget a few years ago where there was an initiative on street sweeping and other revenues related to street sweeping. So that was really just that particular initiative, but any street sweeping tickets would be included in that tag number.
Okay, so even though it says 0 in the actual line item, it would be.
So that was just a budget a few years ago. If you look at some of these numbers, and maybe I'll take a look at it, but maybe filter out some of these 0 budgets because they're rollover from past budgets.
Oh, okay. So. The only reason I ask is because there was street sweeping today, and I went outside and none of the cars that were parked on the side had any tags on them. So, but again, that's not for you. That's why I ask, and I saw the 0 and I'm like, oh, I guess we're not ticketing, but we're supposed to be ticketing. They're just not being ticketed.
Right. Any violations that TT&P issues, whether it's for an expired meter, street sweeping, or a safety violation, would just go in that general tag budget. So.
Okay, if they're being tagged. Okay, and then you mentioned vacancies to help out with some of the balancing. And I mean, I hope we're not keeping these vacancies vacant for that purpose. I hope we're gonna actually try and,
Absolutely not.
you know,
I've been on the
Bill.
record, and I think, our HR department has also been on the record, along with city departments. We'd rather have the bodies. We don't want the vacancies. We'd rather have the bodies. Employees can get burnt out and have gotten burnt out on working overtime in other areas, but it's a capacity issue with the city with hiring.
and I just want to make sure because we do need the bodies versus the vacancies, so I do agree. And just, I guess, one more regarding, you mentioned Board of Ed is balanced. What happened to, they were in a deficit and we were a little concerned. How did they manage to get where they are? I mean, it's good.
Well, that's as of August. I don't know what's gonna happen during the rest of the fiscal year.
Oh, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm
so-
still on,
So
I'm
yes,
on
last year they had a deficit, they had some grants and they did some other cost saving measures that helped them out on
My
the operating
apologies. I'm
side,
thinking-
so that's fine.
PTSD, I guess. Okay, Mr. Chair, I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you, Alder Festa. And my apologies to colleagues for my coughing spell. It seems to have subsided. Further questions from colleagues about the monthly financial report? In connection with a question that our colleague from the 10th Ward asked just a moment ago, we did hear from our personnel director at our last meeting about progress in the hiring and recruitment system for the city. And I believe, if I remember correctly, she said that the next and the best opportunity to talk about whether or not further progress had been made would be in January or February, when enough time had elapsed for those systems to take root, but also for the new rates to have the hoped for effect on the number of qualified applicants trying to get these jobs. And so I will just say now to our colleagues on this committee that I do plan to revisit that question, most likely before the budget process kicks off in March. And I'll keep colleagues apprised as to when we definitely have that scheduled. I don't think we'll have a meeting in January since it'll be a new term. Thank you so much. So right now I'm penciling in the February meeting for an updated conversation with our personnel director about efforts towards and results towards hiring for these vacant positions we have.
If we're still on this committee.
Beg your pardon? Sorry.
If we're still on this.
If we're still on this committee. And whichever future colleagues and future chair might be, that will be my input. Further questions about the monthly financial report? Seeing none, well, thank you, Mr. Gorman.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Is there a second time? Is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? And for a third time, is there a member of the public who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, Alder DeCola.
Mr. Chair, I move that we close the public portion of this meeting.
Second.
The motion has been made to close the public portion and seconded. Any discussion of this motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. The motion carries. We are in deliberations. Alder DeCola.
Mr. Chair, I move item 1.
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. This is the one-year extension of the existing contract between the city of New Haven and the company that runs the Alling Memorial Golf Club. It's called Alling Memorial Golf Club Incorporated, aptly enough. Questions, not questions, discussion of the motion. Discussion on the motion. Alder DeCola.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm in favor of this. This company's been doing a good job there. I know some golfers are really enjoying it, and we're moving forward in a better position with this company right now. And I like the move that the Parks Director is saying about putting this out to bid next year after some of the major projects are finished, so we can maybe generate a better deal for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder DeCullough. Further discussion on this item? I agree that it's a good thing, and I encourage colleagues to vote yes on the motion for a favorable recommendation. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the item, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Alder DeCullough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 2.
Second.
The item has been moved and seconded. This is the item authorizing the city to enter an agreement with these two firms to provide updated parking meters. Discussion of the motion. Alder DeCullough.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in favor of this. I would love the presentation showing the different meters to make an understanding of where we're moving, and now with the phone companies going to 5G, we need to move with that. And the parking meters do generate a great revenue to the city, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you, Alder DeCullough. Alder Walker-Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also in favor of it. I agree with my colleague from Ward 18. The company is no longer going to be making the parts, so we know we have to move to a newer version. And I think it's important that we had a conversation, because I never thought about parking meters in that way until tonight. I mean, I put money in the meter. Sometimes I work in a single use meter, sometimes I don't. I just never think about it in that way, and it made me think about it totally differently. So I think we should get the new system so that we could keep getting money into the city. Thank you.
Further discussion of the motion. Alder Festa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too am in favor of this. We have to obviously move with the times, and we know that hardware and software changes almost every 6 months. And I'd be interested to see if any revenue changes occur once these meters, the newer meters, are put in. It seems like they're going to be more consistent, functioning better, and hopefully the revenues will also show that consistency. So I encourage my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Festa. And just as a reminder, for those of us who will still be on the committee, that is, in March and April, we'll hear from TTMP as they make their budget presentation. And certainly that's an opportune moment to ask about how far this project has progressed and whether or not there's been any impact on revenues. Further discussion on the item. I'll just note for the record that there were some follow-up questions in regards to the exact ARPA account that these funds would be taken from, because I did not see a new allocation. So that's and also the Director Piscatelli mentioned the capital campaign, so the capital account that the monies would come from. So those details are helpful to have as a follow-up. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The item will move forward with a favorable recommendation. On items 3 and 4, item 3 is a contract approval. And as always, we are under very tight time constraints. We want to be able to have our opportunity to vote before the end of the 30-day period. And I think the most prudent course of action is what we usually do, which is to take no action this evening, but instead for me to write a letter to the president asking that the full board discharge this item from this committee at our next full board meeting so that it can be acted on immediately. Unless I see some objection to that, that's what I'll intend to do. Item 4, the request from the administration is to do the same thing. This is a big item. It's an important item. The request is to have the board discharge it from this committee so that the full board could vote on it in our next meeting, so that the contract could be finalized quickly and momentum could be maintained. I, for one, think that's a good idea because we're trying to move really fast. And I'm actually quite pleasantly surprised that the city was able to do the RFP process and come up with a successful and winning respondent and have them ready to come here and make their presentation and talk about their operating plan. So unless I see disagreement from colleagues,
I intend to do the same thing for this item as I intend to do for item 3, which is to ask the president to discharge it from this committee. Alder Furlow, you have a procedural comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I really appreciate you giving us that option, but this is something that is 100% within your purview.
Thank you very much.
You don't need our permission to discharge.
Well, as a matter of fact, it's the president who puts it on the agenda as such, and so, but thank you very much for saying that. So we will take no action on item 4, and I will request that the president list it on the agenda as a discharge item in the next full board meeting. Alder Dakota.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 5 as a read and file.
Second.
Item 5 has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on item 5, the monthly financial report for the month of August? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. It will move forward with the recommendation that it be read and filed. Alder Dakota.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
The motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.